Thanks for staying on with us. This is, of course, Canal de English Special. Libya has been consistently claiming the global news headlines in recent days, following eye-popping revelations indicating that the rickety North African country has become a vibrant hub where African migrants in quest of greener pasture in Europe are smuggled and auctioned as slaves. Before we begin deliberations on this other very touchy subject, here's Meme Dominique with an eye-opener. We probably will have to wait for the technicians to get ready to listen to Meme Dominique's report. But welcome back, Nana Shah. Of course, well, if you left Cameroon at this point in time, you probably have gone through the Sahara Desert.
No, absolutely no. I left Cameroon in the 80s, late, I believe in 1986. I went straight to the United States after my O-levels, A-levels, and I spent a couple of... and I like telling the story when I talk to Africans in Africa, in the U.S., how I found myself in the United States.
Briefly tell us.
Well, when I went to the University of Yaoundé, and I decided to take an exam, and it was for a school in Gaoundéré called INSEAD. Somebody, I think it's INSEAD, agronomical school in Gaoundéré. And they gave me a question. I'm a son of this country. I could not understand the English that was written. So the questions were written in French. It was given to a Francophone to translate. And the Francophone wasn't humble enough to say he cannot translate it in English that an Anglophone can read and understand what they're asking him. But he translated it into English. And I could not understand it. I read it for about 45 minutes, and I just said, maybe Cameroon is not for me.
So fast forward that, and let's get...
So fast forward, I left Cameroon, went to the United States. I was blessed, went to bachelor's mechanical engineering.
It was easy obtaining a visa then to go to the U.S.
I don't know if it was easier, it's always been difficult to get a visa to go to the United States because you have to prove that you're going to the United States not to stay but to return to your home country when you're done with your studies.
Okay, now let's come concretely to the subject. Michael DiMacho, welcome back. Now the question is a phenomenon that's always been there, right? It's not news, but why is it claiming the headlines at this point in time with such intensity?
I think it's simply because of the
slave trade in Libya.
It's simply because of the eye-opener by the CNN. And of course, this is something that has been happening, and the world claims to ignorance about all that. I think it's because of that report that, I can say nauseating report that was given by the CNN that the world has to open. And it's and to the pressure that is coming out from different quarters. You remember that even the UN didn't react promptly. It is just when pressure was coming from different quarters that you heard the Secretary General of the UN making a statement on that and declare. So I think there comes a time when something has to happen in this life, because this is a long and old practice. Going through the Sahara, Africans suffering the way they are to cross and get to Europe for greener pastures. And because of joblessness, of course, some people have said, better be in prison in Europe than to be in your own country where you are also suffering.
You may want to ask, I know some of you are probably wanting to ask why Libya. It may be true that Libya has been a near collapsed country since the demise of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, and that partly explains why this trouble is intensifying out there.
Yes, absolutely, and it saddens me that where are the African leaders? They don't speak up. When Libya was being taken apart by European powers, we see this over and over again. We call it catastrophic win, where a Western nation, a Western leader does not like a leader somewhere else. Like in this case, in Libya, they come and get rid of the leader and create chaos. And it's so unfortunate. But again, we need a new generation of African leaders who can use the resources of Africa to make sure that it's being used for the benefit of Africa. Number one. Number two, we go to the same schools with some of these Europeans. But why do they determine who is a leader in our country? Why do we allow them to determine our leaders? We have to put an end to those practices. Third but not least, it's unfortunate The AOU, I saw the current president of the African Union had requested an inquiry into the issues happening in Libya. Where were the African leaders when Libya was being destroyed?
Alpha Conde actually says they're going to have a concrete statement when they meet at an AU summit from the 29th to the 30th of November in Abidjan in Cote d'Ivoire. We'll be waiting to hear what happens, but I think we should take a break and listen to a testimony from one of the migrants. He's Nigerian, and if you have a soft heart, please don't watch this. It's very sad to hear. It's a migrant testimony, the first of two that we have. Of course, in between, we'll be listening to Meme Dominique's report.
They buy you. You see, they are judging your value as a commodity. They buy you and you will work like a slave.
West African migrants trying to reach Europe say they're being held by smugglers and forced to work for little or no money.
They sell Africans in Libya. They sell men over there. Even 15-year-old armed Libyans come and kidnap you and sell you for 100 or 200 dinars, and then others resell you.
A video released by CNN this week showed young men being auctioned off in Libya as farm workers. A person identified as an auctioneer can be had saying 800, 900, 1,000, 1,100 before two men are sold for 1,200 Libyan dinars or $875. The video sent shockwaves in Africa and the rest of the world and jump-started a drive to help hundreds of migrants to return home. Libya has opened an investigation into the practice.
You know, the CNN video, it's an open secret, which means many people knew about what was going on in Libya.
Protesters demonstrated outside the Libyan embassies in Paris and across Africa after the report came out. The UN says migrants are detained in horrific conditions in Libya, which has become a major transit hub for them following the overthrow of its long-term leader, Muammar Gaddafi, in 2011.
Slavery has no place in our world, and these actions are among the most egregious abuses of human rights and may amount to crimes against humanity.
Though most migrants know the boat trips to Europe are risky, few realize they may face even worse dangers in Libya before even reaching the coast. Gladys Njoroge Morgan, TRT World.
I was sold. On my way coming, I was sold. So after I was sold, they asked me to demand a ransom. The pusherman that put me from Nigeria, I gave him money, he did not pay. So they said since he did not pay, he did not pay that money. They now sold me. I was there, the person who came to buy me gave the man money. They asked me to pay money, so probably you must have been there for like 3 months. They will start beating you. From a week, they will start beating you so that your money will come quickly. So I was there for 8 months before I could pay my money and I went out. If you look at most of the people here, if you check their body, you see the mark, they're beating. With electric, even your boot or they took something like a sharp object. You understand? Most of them lost their life there. Many are dying every day. No phone call. Their family will be thinking that person is dead. He has lost it for her life. You know that he's just in one place suffering. Going back home now, I'm totally frustrated. I don't know where to start from. Because I spent my life savings leaving the country. You understand? Going back home now, a lot of my friends, we start together. Most of them are in Europe now. In the business they are doing, most of them have grown up. So I go back and start back from square one. It's very painful. It's very painful. Even when they gave us food here, water, that's not the main problem to me. The main problem to me is how I'm going to start. That's just the main problem. Because I've lost a lot. My mother have lost a lot too. So it's very difficult. So, all I have to say is that if they say the European Union are helping, so in this kind of case, you deporting numbers of people like this, You don't have to deport them with empty-handed. Because if you look at it, you are deporting us. Before we left, we all have a dream. Isn't it? Yes. We all have a dream. You understand? Hoping that when we get there, we achieve something. Because a lot of people are going there, even through flats, through land. We see what they achieve. We believe that when we get there, we also achieve more than that. That's why we live.
Quite painful and sorrowful watching that last speaker. But the latest we glean on this is that the Libyan ambassador to Cameroon, is called Kituni Mohamed, actually held a press conference in Yaoundé, Cameroon's capital, on Thursday, in which he made this claim. He actually cast doubt on the veracity of claims that those reporting by CNN and others were done rather on Libyan territory. Some say that's a laughable way out of a big issue. But over 200 Cameroonians have been repatriated from Libya earlier this week. The information we have is that 600 more may be arriving in the country. Well, the Libyan government says it's going to foot the bills for the deportation, so we're waiting for them. But even while this guy is shedding tears, in the footage we just watched, Dimancho Michael, there are probably hundreds of other young Cameroonians queuing up to go place their lives on the line and in harm's way in Mali, in Niger, in Beach to go to Europe.
I think this is just...
it's unstoppable. Right?
It is really a pity, Divine. You know, I mean, this is just one among so many Cameroonians who are trying to get through to Europe through very unclear means, and then they get trapped on the way, and then many die, and nobody ever gives an account of that. But yet, you know, we are here increasing budget for elections, billions of francs. I mean, joblessness. You see, it is a pity. And just to come back to what the Libyan ambassador said, I think he may be right. You know that Libya is ungovernable today. There are a lot of factions in Libya. And I mean, he's talking from the government's own point of view. There are people, the regions in Libya where they say they do not have any government. Of course, and they are operating single-handedly without anybody interfering in what they are doing. So, of course, we, you know, it's a pity that when we look at Libya, democratic, I mean, as a dictator in 2011, and you look at Libya today, who is supposed to be a democratic country, it's a pity. Then you compare the two, and then we say what the West is doing to Africa, we really need to recry. And it's an advice to us Africans. I think that we should start building our own Africa, to have an image that all of us would like to see, to have the picture that all of us want to see. I think that is really, we need to create commissions to be able to advise some of our young brothers and sisters to know that they can still find life here in Africa. And it should be a warning to the African presidents.
That's why you're still here, and Dimancho Michael, and that's why you're a lecturer at the Catholic University of Central Africa. You're doing fine, even though your colleagues at the University of Douala are currently on strike, to press for things as basic as toilets and tables to sit on and compile notes for their students. Each of the returnees who got to Yaoundé, Nana Shah, was handed €100. That's about 65,000 francs, well, they say by the European Union and the International Migration Organization. This is encouragement for adventurers who fail.
No, I wouldn't.
Is that how you take it?
No, I wouldn't say that. It's just to give them to get themselves settled, find a small place for the meantime. But I think the most important thing is, how do we combat active hopelessness within our youth? We have to teach our youth that the future of the world is in Africa. The future of the world is being fought in Africa. But unfortunately, no African is sitting on that table where those decisions are being made. And if you are not, the table where the big decision, the superpowers of the world are deciding what they do with Africa. And number two, if no African is sitting, if you are not on the table where the decisions are being made, you are definitely on the menu. And you know what happens when you're on the menu? Right? When you go to a Chupalo, you know what happens when they give you the menu?
You're going to be...
You eat what is on the menu. So what the point is, Africans, we need to speak with one voice. Africa has to get her voice. And it has to be one voice. All Africans, we have to understand how interconnected our economies and our people are. Number two, we need a new generation of African leaders who look at the interests of African people first before their obligations to any European or Western power.
Okay.
And it's most unfortunate we're still lacking in those areas.
Now, the government may find, the government of Cameroon in particular may find consolation in the fact that this is not, well, what some call the embarrassment. It's not a Cameroonian problem as such, because you find young people from the Ivory Coast, from Nigeria, from all across West Africa and even the eastern parts of the continent also caught in the migration slave trade trap. But the fact that the numbers continue increasing mirrors the hopelessness, the level of hopelessness you were mentioning, Dimacho. And Nana Charles' question is how to end hopelessness. Is it to go the Mugabe way?
I think there is...
Seize and nationalize some of these foreign multinationals.
You know, divine these boys around governance. I think that we need to strengthen our democratic institution. We need to, carve an image of a democracy in Africa whereby we have copied something from the West. We do not want to practice it how it has practiced. We want to practice it our way, because all of these things boils from poverty. People leave Africa to go to Europe. It's an African issue. Africa is rich but poor. I was talking with somebody today and somebody said, you know what Europe is having is being harnessed from Africa. I said, Africa is not rich, because you can only be rich when you're able to develop the technology to be able to get what you want. You may have the minerals, you may have the resources, but if you cannot develop to meet up your needs, you are still poor. And therefore, we are asking these African leaders who think that all that they have to concentrate on is protecting themselves, making themselves life president. We have to let them understand that there's life after presidential policies. When they understand that there's life after presidential policies, they are going to treat their citizens well. Because when they get to presidential policy, they think that that is all, and that when they get out, there will be no life anyway. So I think that there is an issue that we need to strengthen our institution. Our constitutions too should be strengthened, so that they shouldn't go the Mugabe way. I think Africa needs to go back to the drawing board to be able to know exactly what they want and what they want for the city in terms of, issues of elections. When elections come, we are talking about constitution. Do they respect the constitution, or we rule with the heart, or do we rule with the head? We need to define what we want. And the people, the youth who think that they have something to offer, they know that when they go to Europe, the next month, the next week, they are able to send money back home, they are able to send things back home, and they think that their future is only in Europe. Okay. So I think we can build our own future here in Africa.
We probably may not have time to come to it, because you mentioned him, Mugabe. I hear he's been granted tons of immunities, which means he can stay back home and travel as much as he wants. We probably don't have time to discuss Zimbabwe under the crocodile. That's in quotes. It's called Emerson Mnangagwa. We'll probably come back to this on Tuesday's edition of the show with producer Ndim Morin rather allows us to have one. But then, closing in on this, we will listen to Dominique Meme's in-depth report on the Cameroonian migrants who returned to Yaoundé earlier this week. What can stop these young people from going?
I think
he was mentioning good governance. Would you add democracy?
Yeah. I won't go there. I'll start by the basics. I'll change the structure of the African economy that relies heavily on export of raw materials.
Add value by transformation.
Add value by transformation. We have engineering schools here, but who are those doing our engineering work for us? So we have to transform our economies from exporting raw materials to transforming them locally and employing our youth. The second one, because of that, because we don't transform, we rely on the economy of the West. We rely on the politics of the West for them to impose certain things on us. So we want to make sure we provide those. Also build the middle class. If we can build a middle class, like in Boya, there's a small semi-valley, high-tech industry building there. Silicon Mountain. I was very impressed but unfortunately, with this Anglophone crisis going on, a lot of those young boys, coming up with new ideas, are beginning to go bankrupt. And it's most unfortunate. It's most unfortunate that we have a crisis which we can resolve. We have the capability, we have the talent, we have the individual who they know how to resolve crises. But unfortunately, we don't want to come to the table and look for a lasting solution that every single Cameroonian should feel that he's part of the governing of this country, that he's an important element of this nation.